Hey everybody, welcome to the Monday show right here, TYT Nation, around the nation. I got that kind of backwards today, but welcome to the show, around the nation, right here, TYT Nation. Got a great show for you guys. I'm, of course, your host, Jeff Waldorf. I'm going to be talking about some pretty important stuff today. Let me give you a quick breakdown of what we're going to talk about. Former Republican National Committee chairman talks about the problem with Donald Trump. That should be a very interesting conversation. Then we've got Howard Dean. We're going to talk about him. We're also going to talk a little bit about the jobs report and how it is misleading. And then we're going to go into a conversation about how we're still in a race to the bottom. And I've got some very compelling numbers to explain why. Then Kellyanne Conway and Eric Bolling. So very interesting stuff today. A lot of interesting things that I want to cover. Now, I'm doing this on top of social media because I really want you guys to start using the hashtag TYTNation if you're on Twitter to talk to me during the show. Because I definitely want to read your tweets. I want to read your feedback. Also, another way that you can get a hold of me in the show and leave me your comments is to use the YouTube Super Chat, which is super cool. So, you know, if you want to use the Super Chat and leave a message for me, I will definitely read it on air. So, that's one really cool way to get a hold of me, as well as, of course, using the hashtag TYTNation. All right, so there's your breakdown of what we're going to talk about today. I want to do some patron shout-outs as well. So for those of you who support us on patreon.com/TYTNation, I do want to give you some shout-outs today. Let's go to Rebecca Taylor, Neely Brown, Rachel, Abby Malson, Frank Lambert, Roy Benzinger, Dennis Cloudier, a Bear 71, Amaranth, which is a cool name, Decrepit Progressive. You can't be that decrepit. You're super cool, and thank you for supporting the show. Alex Dalcid Zalata, Kim Luck, Gopuri Salman, Trisha Kano, Kyle Hensherich, Paul Dolan, Ashnuman Vinit, Stacy O'Neill, Jason Hubert, Joshua Pershin, Gerald Steele, Stefan Pereira, and Alex Elliott. So thank you to everybody who, especially a big thank you to those patrons that I just mentioned. And thanks to all patrons who support the show, patreon.com/TYTNation. Thank you for supporting independent, progressive, non-corporate sponsored media. All right. So with that out of the way, let's get to some of the stories. We'll have a fun story on Trump, as usual. Now, a prominent Republican says that Donald Trump is struggling at doing a job he neither understood and still doesn't understand, nor realize that he would ever get. Now, this is from Michael Steele, who is the former chairman of the Republican National Committee. So he was rather powerful in his day. Now, he talked to ABC News. Now, this is like an Australian version of ABC News while he was down there in Australia. And, of course, Trump had a kind of a little bit of an infamous phone call with Malcolm Turnbull, who happens to be the Prime Minister of Australia, where basically they kind of yelled at each other during the phone call. Super hilarious. Now, anyway, so Michael Steele talks to ABC News, and he says, hey, look, man, Trump, he's having some issues. He's having a real big problem with the transition between being, a businessman and a reality TV star, and going from that to becoming president of the United States, being essentially a politician. So, yeah, he seems to be having a few problems with that transition about 7 months in still. Well, it turns out nobody knew being president would be complicated, right? Now, Steele further explains that he believes that Trump is used to getting his way. And so far as president, he has not been getting his way on a lot of issues. He said, quote, "Not everyone listens to you just because you're president." He's got to deal with that, and he doesn't quite yet know how to do that. As I said, you know, you've had quite a while, half a year. You think that you would get it by now, but no, turns out, again, nobody knew being president would be so complicated. I didn't know that I would actually have to do politics and agree with people and, you know, actually show leadership instead of just ordering somebody to do stuff. Like he ordered Reince Priebus to go and swat flies for him and all that stuff. No, it turns out you actually have to be somewhat diplomatic when you're a president, and you have to make trade-offs and sacrifices and be diplomatic, as I've said, and actually try to work with people to get things done. You can't just strong-arm your way through politics. That's not what politics is about. But he doesn't understand that. Again, he's a child. Now, Steele continues, you have 535 members of Congress who have a different view. You have cabinet secretaries who, while they might work for you, still carry out different agendas. Oh, and he does not like that, by the way. That's why he insists on people being loyal to him. But anyway, he says you've also got the voters, the press, and all those interests out there who have a say about what you just said, and that's not something Donald deals with too well. Yeah, we kind of tell from those late night 3 a.m. tweet storms from Trump saying, oh my God, dishonest media, fake news, they're terrible. They are the enemy of the American people. And this goes out to all the losers and haters out there that are sad babies. Yeah, no, he handles it super well. What are you talking about, Jeff? That's what a leader does. And that's basically, and look, I had a problem with this, right? Whenever Trump did something that was not insane, the media was like, oh my God, look at Donald Trump. This is the day he became president when he decided not to shit himself in front of everyone else. So presidential. So presidential. Oh, come on. We got to stop that. We got to stop that. This guy's not presidential. He's an idiot. He doesn't deserve that seat of power. Yet somehow, of course, he is in that seat of power, arcane institution of the, of course, Electoral College, which once again has robbed the American people of what they actually wanted. But anyway, so all this, basically, Michael Steele is saying, oh, you mean he's basically not a politician? Well, we already knew that. Strange thing is that for some people, that was actually a draw. But it turns out you kind of actually have to be a little bit of a politician to know what the fuck you're doing and to actually get things done. You kind of have to work with people in politics. They don't all just follow you just because you're the president. But anyway, now, on that, Trump, I mean, look, he's used to having an environment where basically you tell someone to do something and they do it. But the other thing is that people, okay, so I know I'm like, you know, going from topic to topic here, and I'm kind of switching gears a little fast because my brain's like going haywire today. But the other thing about being in that environment is, wasn't that the kind of environment that's good for a deal maker? Somebody who, you know, has to go and work with other people in order to hammer out deals and different things on policy. He's supposed to be the deal maker. That's why another reason a lot of people voted for him. Oh, he's not a politician. He's not your standard politician, which is true. And it turned out to be a big detriment for him. But also, they said, well, he's a good deal maker. He's going to be able to make great deals for America. Well, what deals is he actually doing for America? Nothing, really. There are no good deals. There's nothing going on. Except for lots and lots of golf. And as far as being a good businessman, right? Look, he's not a good deal maker, and he's also not a good businessman. Again, he's gone bankrupt numerous times from other shitty deals. And look, he's had to get bailed out all the time from his daddy. That's not the mark of a good businessman. What that is that it's a mark of a classic spoiled rich kid who doesn't understand how the world works and how politics is. In his world, it's I'm the boss. You listen to me. If you don't listen to me, you're going to get fired. In fact, Michael Steele goes into that. He says, when he said he wanted something done at Trump Tower, it got done. No one said, no, sir, I really don't think we should do that. Because if you did, you didn't come into work the next day, as there was no job. That's not the way Washington works, and it's certainly not the way the presidency works. And again, that's one of the many reasons why I hate the idea of, hey, maybe we should get a businessman to run the government like a business. No, look, that doesn't work because those two things they're not the same. And I shouldn't have to explain that because they don't work the same. Politics, of course, requires compromise, requires working with others. You can't go around making all unilateral decisions and firing people who disagree with you because they're not sucking up to the boss. You actually have to, again, be bipartisan. You actually have to learn how to work with people. Now, Trump, he thinks that's how it works, and that's why he doesn't get it. And look, you can understand. So say you hire some other business person, right, to be president of the United States. I know hire is a strange word for it, elect. But basically, we're saying, hey, run the country and represent us. So in a sense, you are actually like hiring them in a certain. It depends on how you look at it. But anyway, so say you elect somebody who's only not in politics, but he was in business, ran a successful business. Well, that person still has the capacity to learn. So some, like when Donald Trump came into office, some might have thought, okay, look, he's new at this, but he's got the capacity to learn. 7 months later, he has shown that he has zero capacity to learn and zero willingness to learn. That's problematic. And look, why doesn't he learn? It's because he doesn't care to learn. Mr. Steele said that Mr. Trump was basically focused not on doing a good job, not on learning how to do a good job, but basically on how he looked to others. Quote, this is who he is. This is a guy obsessed with his own self-image, how his numbers are doing, whether everything is playing to a narrative he has developed in his own head. Again, that's coming from a fellow Republican, former leader of the Republican National Committee. This is a guy who's like, yeah, no, the dude, he's obsessed with himself. That's all he's obsessed with. Whether or not he's winning or whether or not something looks good for him or looks bad for him. He's only obsessed with looking good, with his own self-image. And look, that's why there have been reports of insiders saying that, yeah, what we do, like, we can't get Donald Trump to go and actually pay attention to policy papers. So what we've had to do is we've had to, put his name throughout the papers just to get him to pay attention. That's so incredibly sad. But again, that's who this guy is. Now, as far as the narrative, that narrative is, hey, I'm awesome. I'm Trump. I do no wrong. Everybody else does wrong. In fact, I'm the victim here. Talk about the snowflake victim mentality. Donald Trump lives in that snowflake victim mentality world. Because in his world, he cannot do any wrong. He doesn't apologize for messing up. He doesn't acknowledge any mistakes. No, it's always like, no, you're fake. You're lying. The media is terrible. All the politicians are terrible. I'm the greatest. And everything that I say is right. And if you say that I'm lying, I'm not actually lying. It's you who are the liar. That's what this is about. That's who he is. Now, interestingly enough, they asked Steele about, hey, man, okay, so with everything that's going on with the investigations, Mueller is actually looking into Donald Trump's corruption. This has gone far beyond Russia or just, the election itself. Well, do you think that Donald Trump is actually going to be here for the entire term? Now, he said, I think the president will be here for as long as he wants to be here. At the end of the day, he's going to control a lot more than people hope. He's not going anywhere. Well, on that, we'll see what happens. Now, I think that there is a very slim chance when it comes to impeachment. And look, I know when I say that, I crush dreams and hopes of a lot of people. But seriously, Mike Pence, that's what we're going to get if that happens. But look, right now, even if you're in favor of impeachment and like, okay, we can weather Mike Pence. Again, I disagree with that. I think Mike Pence would actually be worse because he's actually more competent. But at the same time, okay, as far as impeachment goes, well, we need evidence. We need a lot more evidence. And look, Mueller, as I said, he's putting together a case. He's putting together a team. And they're actually expanding it to look into Donald Trump's financial corruption. That's sort of a big deal. But nonetheless, long shot when it comes to possible impeachment. Okay. So, I largely agree with Michael Steele here. Trump, he's not going to leave. He's not one to really back down. And for now, look, hey, that could change. But it seems very, very unlikely that he will either leave or get removed. The only hope is that the Democrats are, smart enough to actually put up somebody to, beat him in 2020. Somebody that can actually win. Maybe somebody that, with a name that rhymes like, or rhymes with Ernie Banders or something like that. I don't know. Somebody to think of, right? Is there somebody that just happens to be the most popular politician in America that happens to be somebody who's Democratic aligned? Maybe somebody who ran for president on the Democratic ticket back in 2016, or, ran in the primary to be the Democratic nominee. But look, again, he's not going anywhere. As far as I can tell right now, at this moment, that could change. But again, unlikely. Now, we have been seeing recently some interesting things on that. Some GOP members start to defect. Now, if that changes and a majority of the Republicans, the GOP, defects, well, then we've got a different story. Or if the Democrats manage to take both the House and the Senate by wide majorities, then, okay, that could also change. I don't know the likelihood of that. It all depends, really, on the Democrats and what kind of candidates they run in 2018. And Justice Democrats and these other groups are actually trying to, do something to make it more likely for a Democratic victory. But we'll have to see how that shakes out. But for right now, again, I agree with Michael Steele. He ain't going nowhere. And so, sad. Okay, anyway. There's that. Let's move on to China. Now, recently, there was a pretty positive job report. And, hey, look at that. Lots of jobs. Oh, my God. And it's 7 months into the Trump administration. Trump must be actually bringing in the jobs. I mean, look, he's been doing such a great job with passing zero policy. But anyway, let me give you the numbers on that and sort of break it down. Well, this is actually kind of not a good thing. According to the Labor Department, over 209,000 jobs were added in July. And the unemployment rate is staying at a low 4.3%. Now, that is the lowest since early of 2001. So, look, generally, I think that this is a pretty good idea. And a lot of you could say, okay, it's Obama's economy that brought him a lot of jobs, or some are also arguing, like Trump is, that it's the Trump economy that's bringing in the jobs. And, okay, well, you could have an argument on that. But I want to get past that partisan thing and actually look into what kind of jobs they really are and how much they pay. And, well, when you start to look into that and a few examples, you find out that those jobs, well, they're jobs, turns out they're not really all that great. So let's go to one of the big examples here, and that is Amazon. Now, this is actually a write-up from Forbes magazine. Now, Forbes ain't nobody's liberal. But in this article, they break down how Amazon and jobs like it are actually making it so that, they're more continuing that race to the bottom. Well, they explained that Amazon just recently built a 1.2 million square foot warehouse in Fall River, Massachusetts. Now, Fall River had apparently seen some very rough times during the recession, and they're still trying to recoup. So here comes Amazon saying, we're going to build this tremendous warehouse here, and that's going to help you with jobs. Okay, so those are good jobs with fair wages, right? No. Let me give you some context of what is going on in Fall River. Now, about 19% of the population are people who are immigrants. They're foreign born. Okay. Now, and at least a third of them are on the SNAP program, formerly, known as food stamps. Okay. So how's that going to help the immigrant population that are on government assistance? Now, what we want to do is we want to get people off of food stamps. That's the liberal position. We want to give people good jobs with good wages so they don't have to rely on, public assistance. But we want to have those public assistance safety nets there just in case they actually need them. So that's the progressive position. Like, yeah, we want you to have better jobs, a better opportunity, or better pay. But also, if you're unable to get to that point and to have that opportunity, well, we want you to have a strong safety net to protect you just in case you fall. That makes sense, right? Now, some people will probably be like, no, that doesn't make sense at all. It's communist. But anyway, guaranteed I'll see some of those comments later. So how's that going to, so this Amazon, warehouse is coming to Fall, Fall River. Is that going to help with the numbers? Well, it turns out, no. According to Forbes, Amazon's hiring spree here will not make a dent in those numbers whatsoever, nor will it help the city collect more taxes since they're getting over about $15 million in tax breaks. Well, surely it's got to be helpful somewhat, right? Right? Again, not really. Turns out the pay in that area is also not good enough to get people out of poverty. Now, the starting pay at the Amazon warehouse is about $12.75 an hour. Now, that's for no degree required. So for entry level, I guess, yeah, this seems pretty decent. It's definitely better than $7.25 an hour. It's almost double. Well, look at that. Now, for an inventory manager with warehousing experience, the pay is actually double the minimum wage. It's $14.70 an hour, though that requires a bachelor's degree. Now, again, a lot of you might be like, actually, hey, $12.75, that's not bad at all. What are you talking about? What are you complaining about? It's better than McDonald's, right? It pays maybe $9, $10 an hour, so it's going to give people in that area some opportunity. Fair enough, okay? Now, but I've got some more numbers on how the local economy in Fall River won't benefit too much from that, because it turns out that that wage is still a poverty wage for some American families. Now, some of the jobs are also temporary, right? So they're temporary hires through a staffing agency. Look, I've worked for a staffing agency before, and it's definitely not the best. You usually end up getting lower wages, no benefits, and you're essentially at will. You can be let go for anything, any conceivable infraction, or just for whatever reason. Hey, if they don't like you, gone. Okay. So, again, some of the jobs, as I said, are temporary hires. The job description for one of the $12.75 an hour jobs includes the ability to stand for 10 to 12 hours straight in a fulfillment center where the temperature will occasionally exceed 90 degrees. Okay, well, that's lovely. Now, recently, like this brings me back to a piece I read back in 2013 about Amazon warehouses and what it's like to actually work in one of these types of warehouses. Well, it turns out that people were treated like crap and worked in terrible conditions. Now, let me give you a little snippet of this article. Now, the article begins with somebody from the Chamber of Commerce warning the reporter to, quote, not to take anything that happens to you there personally. Now, wait a minute, that's weird. A job has to tell you, hey, man, just don't take anything personally, okay, when you work there. Well, wait a minute. Does that mean that they're going to be shitty to you? And that's what a reporter asked. Wait, they're going to call me, they're going to make fun of me? They're calling me names? Or what are they going to do? Are they going to yell at me? And it turns out, yes, they'll do all of that. The Chamber of Commerce person explained, they need you to work as fast as possible to push out as much as they can, as fast as they can. So they're going to give you goals. So far, okay, fine. That's totally fine. And then if you know what, and then you know what, if you make those goals, they're going to increase the goals. Again, okay, that's fine. Where it's not fine is that, quote, they'll be yelling at you all the time. It's like the military. They have to break you down so they can turn you into what they want you to be. So they're going to tell you, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, to make you work harder. Don't say, this is the best I can do. Say, I'll try, even if you know you can't do it. Because if you say, this is the best I can do, they will let you go. They hire and fire constantly, every day. You'll see people dropping all around you, but don't take it personally and break down or start crying when they yell at you. So that's the workplace culture that we have today. What's next? Are they going to bring the whip? They're pretty close to that. They're pretty close to that so far. Now, like, I got to ask, whatever happened to positive motivation? Like, hey, you're doing a good job. Keep at it, man. Great job. No, instead of doing that, they're like, you must work harder, slave. You're not good enough. You're a terrible worker. You suck. You're going to get fired. Pick up the pace. That's what our current work culture is all about. Because, look, so many people are disposable, and there's a reason for that. But again, that's not the way we should conduct a workplace. We should actually, I don't know, respect employees and make sure that they feel welcome and that their contribution to the workplace is valued. And we don't value workers anymore. We don't value people anymore. And that's sad. That's super sad. It's like it's easier to be a dick than to actually motivate your employers or employees and treat them like human beings. But anyway, now as far as how like how this model and why this model actually works, we have to go to the fact that there is so much surplus labor in the market. So what Forbes did is that they decided to break down the math and do a little comparison between China and the United States to see whether or not the wages for this for doing this job is actually worth it. Because again, I mentioned $12.75 for just working on the floor in Fall River. Is it worth it even if you're going to be treated like you're garbage? Well, in the warehouse in Massachusetts, the workers are limited to 30 hours a week. So on the math, a 30-hour work week at $15 an hour is $450 per week gross, or about $1,800 a month. That comes out to about $22,000 less a year. At 40 hours, most jobs there come with no benefits, so 30 hours is the maximum. Amazon full-timers are earning about $28,800 before taxes. Now that's $15 an hour. So I said they did work at $12.75, so they're actually getting considerably less. Now Fall River sits on the Rhode Island border. In Rhode Island, a family of 3 with a parent earning $13 an hour qualifies for food stamps. So in that area, that pay, $12 an hour, is actually a poverty wage. The lowest paid workers in the warehouse, assuming 30 hours a week, would earn $18,000 annually, or roughly $7,200 more than the median Chinese worker. So this is where they start to do the comparison with how people get paid in China compared to doing the warehouse work, the same work in the United States. Now in China, the economy is different. There's a majority of people that survive on less than $2,000 a year. So that's actually a really good wage. If you're getting about $12,000 a year in China, you're doing pretty good. But if you're getting $12,000 a year in America, you're doing very bad. You're not winning here. Now, compared to the median wages in Beijing, which is different. So again, I mentioned that most of China is rather poor. $2,000 a year will serve a family and will make sure that they're out of poverty. But in some of these cities in China, like Beijing, for example, they're actually much more wealthy. Now, that 14.75 an hour hire that's working 30 hours a week is earning about $442 versus Beijing's medium wage of $329. So again, if you're making $14.75 an hour in Beijing, you're doing great. But if you're making $14.75 an hour in Falls, I can't seem to remember that Fall River. I have a hard time remembering that that city's name. Fall River. I know, right? If you're making $14.75 an hour in Fall River, you're still not doing great, because you're, again, $15 an hour is the minimum living wage in a lot of these areas. So you're still not making that. So again, in China, you're doing great at $14.75 an hour, but in America, you are not. And in certain places in America, you are not. So now, again, they do a lot of these comparisons, right? For example, they looked at housing prices in Beijing and Fall River. Now, a one-bedroom apartment in Fall River costs about $1,000 a month. A one-bedroom apartment in Beijing costs about $930. That's just to show you how alike they are, because, again, that is a more wealthier area in China. But we're not dealing with a wealthier area in America. Now, Beijing, as I said, is one of their rich cities. But Fall River is not. It's actually one of the poorer places. So that wage, and they're doing the same wage in both of those cities, one's going to be coming out ahead of the other. Now, in the grand scheme of things, though, those people in China still end up making less. But the Chinese economy is much more different than ours, as I keep pointing out. Fall River's salary is still higher than that of Shanghai. And professional service workers like doctors, even low-income cities like Fall River, earn more than they do in China. But China aside, they write, in constant dollar terms, median weekly earnings in the U.S. have risen about $15 a week since 2008, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. In current dollar terms, total weekly wages ended the fourth quarter of 2008 at $727 per week and hit $863 in the second quarter of this year. Now, they assume that a recent graduate from the University of Massachusetts was hired by Amazon at the best possible wage of $14.75 and was putting in a 30-hour work week. They would gross about $21,600. That type of annual pay would be considered poverty unless you were single. U.S. households in the lowest quintile of income earners had incomes of $22,800 or less, according to the Census Bureau. Okay, so there's a lot to that. That was a strange comparison that the author went and looked at, but that's it kind of sets the stage of what the hell is going on, as Donald Trump likes to famously say. So again, China and America, they're getting similar wages, but in China, it takes you a lot further than it does in America, which is actually why people in America need a wage. You can't just go and have this race to the bottom. Now, one of the reasons, of course, that we've seen a lot of income inequality, right, is that we've had a recession, and we also had for about 30 years stagnating wages and an increase in the amount of money at the top through giant tax cuts and declining powers of unions. Now, another factor is, ironically, trade with China, who has, of course, lower wages. U.S. median wage growth remains subdued over the last 15 years of China's World Trade Organization entry. Once they entered the trade organization, all of our corporations, they looked at China and they looked at their workforce and said, well, they'll work for less. We're going to go there and we're going to get their wages. We're going to have them make our stuff, and then we're going to send it back and sell it for a lot higher. That's what they've done. And that has, of course, forced down wages for a lot of American workers, especially when we have things like CAFTA, which is a free trade agreement with China. So, and that has led to, again, a lot of our corporations manufacturing all their shit in China, which is great for the companies and all, but it's not so good for the workers. Now, with the money that they saved on labor, They didn't go and invest in America. No, what they did is they went and lobbied politicians to lower their tax rates, and they went and invested in themselves when it came to the stock market. So they've done a lot of self-investment in their stock prices to artificially inflate them without actually having, because you can go and you can invest in yourself, in your own company, through stock buybacks, inflate your stock price without actually bringing in more profit, without actually being a more profitable company. So, and that explains why our stock prices, or the stock market in America, is still going insane. But it's not trickling down to the workers, and that is the big problem here. And thanks to globalization, of course, China now sets the global price of labor in manufacturing and is now looking to do so in logistics and transportation. And of course, that is leading to a more race to the bottom. Now, the side effect of that, of course, is ironically lower productivity in America, the unskilling of blue-collar workers, and to some extent, the weakening outlook for middle-income labor, particularly in the manufacturing sector. Now, that's what Forbes says. Now, a lot of people might be like, well, yeah, well, how dare those Chinese people work for lower wages? Well, number one, I don't really blame them for that. They're just essentially trying to live and provide for their own families. No, what this is about? This is about bad trade policy and corporate greed. Now, that corporate greed, of course, will drive companies to go and get the cheapest labor. Now, that unfortunately right now exists in Asia, where they have a huge labor pool. But they're trying to bring that back into America. They're trying to drive the cost for labor down so far that they're, that they can bring those manufacturing and this warehouse jobs and stuff back to America and have Americans work for near Chinese wages. And that's one of the big issues here. And also, again, I mentioned the working conditions there, right? That labor pool also allows people to be disposable. So now they can treat people like crap and pay them low wages and give them no benefits. And they're fine with it because, hey, man, we can just replace it with somebody else. And they've got this disdain for working people. And they work them in conditions like we've seen in China already for pay that is somewhat similar. And look, if wages had kept up with inflation and productivity, wages in America would be over $20 an hour, somewhere around $22 an hour. So again, that's a huge problem. So these manufacturing jobs and these warehouse jobs, before we had these bad trade deals and this neoliberal economics, these were middle-class jobs. Now those same jobs are either in China, or since Chinese wages have been rising and American wages have been stagnant, they're coming back here and they're going for, $9, $10, $11 an hour, $12 an hour for some of these jobs that used to be worth $25, $26, $30 an hour. So again, those are a huge problem. And another big problem we're looking at is the minimum wage of $7.25 an hour, which, as Bernie Sanders famously puts it, a starvation wage. So if you want to talk about how the economy is getting better, but not only under Trump, but Obama as well, whatever side of the argument you're on, you've got to look at the fact that it's actually not gotten a lot better. We might have more jobs, but the jobs are low wage and they're actually worse. The economy is not getting better because of better jobs. It's getting better, sort of, or at least for the top, definitely getting better for the top, by bringing in low wage jobs that are, again, are a lot like their Chinese counterparts, with low wages, poor working conditions. Look, there's a lot of reasons that you can look at that. Part of it is definitely the decline of unions. But this is where we're at. You've got to go to what these jobs are, what they look like, how much they pay, what kind of benefits they give. And you need to go past the jobs report was great last month. Wonderful. You got to look beyond that to see what's really going on. For a lot of Americans, the truth is that there has been very little recovery. And until we figure out ways in order to fix that, and again, I believe in raising the minimum wage, and doing a little bit of protectionist trade policy. And I might be wrong on that, but I'm open to suggestions that will actually work. But until we do that, we're going to continue to live in an economy that's already hit bottom for much of the working class, and it continues to squeeze out the middle class. And we've got to do something, because that is unsustainable. Okay. I know that took a long time, but I thought that was important to cover. So let's go to Howard Dean. Okay. Now, former DNC chair and current health insurance lobbyist Howard Dean is really sick of progressives and their goddamn purity tests. Now, he recently appeared on an episode of AM Joy to do what I can only describe as trying to further alienate the progressive wing of the Democratic Party and also make sure the Democrats never win an election again. Now, this, of course, comes in response to some very valid vetting of possible 2020 candidate Kamala Harris, who has appeared as the choice of the establishment donors to run against Trump in 2020. Now, Harris, she has a few problems, okay? For one, she doesn't have a giant record. There's no real huge record of accomplishments to look at. She doesn't necessarily poll greatly in matchups against Donald Trump. She's had some questionable donations from Steven Mnuchin and refused to go after Mnuchin's bank, One West, when they were found doing fraud. So there are some very big issues. Now, however, she has been very critical of Donald Trump and has come out seemingly in favor of some progressive ideas like Medicare for all. So that's to be completely fair. Now, some of us on the left, myself included, since we don't really know Kamala Harris all that well, and from what we've seen, it seems like, I don't know about this. She doesn't really have a huge history of supporting progressive policies, and basically anything. And what we have seen is less than discouraging. Well, we have not developed a trust. And there seems to be a very big trust problem on the left when it comes to Democratic donors, okay? Or I'm sorry, Democratic candidates. Now, as far as the donors are concerned, we've been seeing a lot of them throw their weight behind Kamala Harris. Again, that's not a huge good sign. We're very, very skeptical of Kamala Harris. And now that we've expressed that skepticism, Howard Dean, he's going to be like, well, I'm not very happy about this. And he's going to say this.
There has always been a section of the left, which I call as the whiny party, the party that doesn't really want to win. They just want to be pure. And if they go down swinging purely, then that's fine. Well, the problem with that is it leaves behind the people who really need their help. If we're going to have a single payer or Medicare for all or whatever we're going to have in health care that covers every American, as every other industrialized country have, then we all have to pull together.
All right. Hey, you know what? We'll pull together on that issue. Wonderful. So let's see more of you get on board. But we want more than just platitudes. We actually want people who have a history of fighting for this. And look, maybe that's unfair to say, well, you have to have a history of fighting for that for us to even consider you. But at least you should be fighting for it now and actually doing more than just talking about it, because we've seen talk before. And what's that old saying? Talk is cheap. Okay. Now, anyway, again, this is my skepticism showing out. Now, let's get to the substance of what he said. Oh, there's a section of the left. They're just whining. They don't actually want to win. No. Actually, we do want to win. you know how you win? You back the most popular politician in America. Now, that happens to be right now Bernie Sanders. Now, that could, of course, change. Now, if Kamala Harris suddenly became super popular with the American people and pulled, 60, 70%, 65, 62% with all Americans, okay, then it would be a no-brainer to back Kamala Harris. Or if Cory Booker suddenly became super, super popular. Or if Joe Biden's already super popular. He's actually the second most popular politician on the Democratic side in America. So, okay, again, no brainer. But speaking of Kamala Harris, well, she's not the most popular person in America. In fact, a lot of people don't even know her. So, look, that could be a credit on her side. Maybe when she gets her name out there and people start to realize who she is, then maybe that popularity will pick up, or maybe not. But as far as how she polls against Trump now, well, she polls ahead by 1 percentage point on Trump. And again, that could change. And Bernie Sanders, his poll numbers against Trump have not changed. Since 2016, he's led Trump by double digits. Now, another new poll, I think it was, might have been a Fox poll, or a new ABC News Washington Post poll, had him and Joe Biden crushing Trump by double digits. So if you want to win, as, Howard Dean says he wants to win, well, wouldn't it make sense to go with the politician that is most likely to win? That polls reliably against the opponent that you're trying to take out. You think that would make sense, right? Look, and that itself, that's not being whiny. That's actually being smart. But see, the problem with this is that this goes to the smugness of the establishment. They still think that they know better than their own voters, than their own base. They still think that they can put up somebody, a person of color or a woman, and then shame people into voting for them, even if they don't agree with that person's positions. Again, this isn't about what kind of face you put up there. Look at Bernie Sanders. He's like a frumpy 5-year-old. It's not about the face. It's about the policies, and it's about the record. They haven't learned this, and they think, well, we're just going to put up a young woman of color, and then everybody will flock. Or, more cynically, if you want to look at it, they put up this person of color who is more establishment, who is donor-friendly. They put this person up so they can deflect criticism of that person's record by going to the tried and true methods of, well, if you don't like this candidate, it's not because you have an actual problem with the policy. No, it's because you're sexist and you're racist and you're a Bernie bro. Now, what do you think is more likely in this case? And look, that's the major problem here. And look, also calling progressives who actually want to win, and actually want to win on the issues, and actually have somebody that they can trust, calling them whiny. That's a bit of a problem. Because, like, those things, calling people whiny, sexist, racist Bernie bros for not supporting just any candidate you put up there, well, that's not going to bring people into the party. That's not going to help the party. And it's not really going to get a lot of people to vote for your candidate. You cannot shame people into voting for such candidates that are unpopular. And again, we don't know if Kamala Harris will prove to be unpopular, but right now, I guess I should say, she is not well known enough to be popular or unpopular. But as far as when it comes to the base, who's actually looked into her, she is pretty unpopular. So, but again, she's got to be out to the American people, and the American people need to see whether or not they actually like her and like what she stands for and like her policies and things like that. Now, the thing is that the DNC is not waiting to do this. People like, Joanne Reed and Howard Dean now, and a lot of other centrist Democrats are now really pushing if you have an issue with Kamala Harris, you are a racist, sexist Bernie bro. Simple as that. When again, all we're doing is expressing skepticism and actually looking at her record. But that's the problem. They've already chosen somebody and they're defending that person to the hilt. They're not actually letting the voters pick. Why? Well, they're worried that maybe the voters might pick somebody that's a little bit more progressive. And that might hurt someone like Howard Dean's, and I'm using his as an example, that might hurt his bottom line, since he is a healthcare industry lobbyist. Just saying. And I know people are very, very sensitive to that. Oh, how dare you say that just because he's an industry lobbyist doesn't mean he's going to vote for progressive positions like Medicare for All. He even talked about Medicare for All. If we want that, we've got to unite. But we actually want to unite behind somebody who doesn't just say the words, but who actually means it. We want our politicians to represent us, not the corporations, not the special interests. Now, again, when it comes to people who don't want to win, it seems like by ignoring the base, people like Howard Dean, the whiny base, calling them whiny, sexist Bernie bros, well, that's not the way to win. And if they actually do want to win, they're doing a really, really bad job at it. I've got one more clip here from Howard Dean. He continues.
And people who sit out or crank on some candidate because they did this or that, it wasn't to their purity test, are basically turning their back on the very people they pretend to represent. So I don't have a lot of patience with this wing of the Progressive Party. And this is a lot of this is a media creation. The media sees conflict. It creates this to-do. There are not a lot of people that feel the way that you all described about Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
I think we just have to get a life and pull together and do what's right for the country instead of having these silly fights among ourselves, which I have to say are perpetrated in part by the media.
Unite, goddammit. That's what he's saying. Unite. Just unite already. Stop. Get a life and unite. Man. No. You don't have a lot of patience with progressives. I don't have a lot of patience with people like you. And look, the last I knew, the Democratic Party, you need us. Sorry. It's not the other way around. We don't need you politicians. In fact, we kind of hate you politicians. And most of America also hates politicians. We don't need you. You need us. You need our votes. So you need to start reaching out to us. You want unity? You come to us. You come to the voters. That's all we're saying. And yet somehow we're the whiny ones. Now, again, the whole idea of, shaming people for, or shaming people into voting for people that they don't believe in, they don't know, and they don't trust to represent us, that's a losing idea. And they're going to continue to lose. Look, the American people, poll after poll, it's shown that they're tired of neoliberalism. They're tired of the establishment, and they're tired of the corruption. And yet, if you actually want to win, then you go with candidates who are not going to represent those things. Now, if that is putting up a purity test, well, then I guess the majority of the American people are all guilty as charged. Okay. Let's go there. Let's go to Eric Bolling next. All right. Fox News will have to reset their counter of sex scandals because there is a new one possibly involving Eric Bolling. Now, Fox News said on Saturday that host Eric Bolling will now be suspended from the air pending the results of an investigation of whether or not he had sent lewd photos to some of his coworkers. Here we go again. How many Fox News personalities does this make that have been charged with some sort of sexual harassment or just at least being a skeevy-ass perv? Now, news of the suspension came one day after HuffPost published a story saying that more than a dozen sources, 14 to be exact, confirmed that Bolling had sent female colleagues unsolicited photos of his genitals. Wonderful. Now, look, I never understood that. And, like, my wife comes up to me and is like, why do people send pictures of their dicks to people? I don't understand it. You're a guy. You should understand that. No, I don't get it. I don't get it at all. Why would you send random pics of your junk to people? Like, what? Like, oh, hey, man. Hey, look at this unsolicited picture of my penis. Isn't it great? No, I don't understand. I don't understand. Like, but it is kind of amazing when you think about it. Some guys actually think that sending a random picture of their cock is going to actually be fruitful somehow. Like, that's going to work. Like the woman who gets it is gonna be like, oh my God, that cock is so awesome. I want to have sex with you. No, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Now, I know some of the guys who do this think, hey man, if a woman sent me a picture of her junk, I'd be interested. Okay, but look, that's not the same. Now, with that said, Bowling's attorney says, you know what, that did not happen. No, he did not send those pictures to those women. In fact, they said, this is Michael Bowe, the attorney that represents Bowling, told CNN Money, the anonymous uncorroborated claims are untrue and terribly unfair. We intend to fully cooperate with the investigation so that it can be concluded and Eric can return to work as quickly as possible. Okay, but are they anonymous uncorroborated claims? Well, we'll look into it. Now, the Huffington Post reporter who broke the story, Yashar Ali, said he worked on it for 3 months and reached 14 different sources in and out of Fox News and Fox Business. Here we go again. So, look, that's a lot. That's a lot of sources. Maybe not all of them are true. But, hey, man, that's what they're investigating. So, wonderful. Now, recipients of the photo confirmed the contents to Huffington Post, which is not revealing their identities. Because it turns out that a lot of these women still work at Fox News. Or, you know, in that area, they're still associates of Bowling. So it's like, hey, man, I really don't want to out myself because we're going to get dragged through the mud. We've seen what happened before. So we're not interested in that, but it did happen. We're just saying. Now, the women who are Bowling's current and former Fox colleagues concluded the message was from him because they recognized his phone number from previous work-related and informal interactions. Now, the messages were reportedly sent several years ago and on separate occasions. Now, they said that the women did not solicit those messages, which would be completely different. If they want it, hey, go ahead. Now, they told colleagues that they were deeply upsetting and offensive that those pictures were. One of the recipients said that when she replied to Bowling via text, telling him never to send her such photos again, he did not respond. 4 people outside the recipients also confirmed to HuffPost that they've seen the photo, and 8 others have said the recipients had spoken to them about it. So again, you've got a lot of corroboration going on here. Now, as I said, most of those women have chosen to remain anonymous, but one hasn't. And that is Carolyn Heldman. Now, she's a former Fox News contributor. She wrote a lengthy Facebook post detailing Bowling's alleged harassment. She said that Bowling would also contact me via phone and text after shows, sometimes to apologize for that behavior, and then do it again. Oh, I'm so sorry I sent you a picture of my dick. Here's a picture of my balls. No, don't do that. Don't do that at all. Or sometimes he just wanted to talk. He said he wanted to fly me out to New York for an in-studio hits and have fun. He asked me to go have meals with him on several occasions, but I found excuses not to go. Again, once he took me up to his office in New York, showed me his baseball jerseys, and in the brief time I was there, let me know that his office was his favorite place to have sex. I know other women have had similar experiences with Bowling, which means that lots of folks at Fox knew about his behavior well before 2017. Now, look, Bowling's attorney, he says, Mr. Bowling recalls no such inappropriate communications and does not believe he sent any such communications and will vigorously pursue his legal remedies for any false and defamatory accusations that are made. So on that statement from his lawyer, he doesn't recall making those things. He does not believe that he sent those communications. Oh, why not a flat-out denial? That's always weird. I mean, I don't recall sending those dick pics, and I certainly don't believe I did so. Yeah, but that's not really a flat-out denial. Does anybody find that kind of weird? Maybe that's just me. I don't know. But look, in my opinion, whenever somebody says something like that, I don't believe I did that. There's a good chance they probably actually did do that. I'm just saying. And look, I don't know for certain, right? But it does fit in with the culture, okay? And the culture, look, it started with Roger Ailes. He did this stuff throughout his entire career. Bill O'Reilly, same thing. He got fired for it. You also have Charles Payne, who's currently been accused of doing sexual harassment. And guess what? He's on another break. Interesting. Now, again, speaking of the culture, right? This is a cultural thing at Fox News. It's not a surprise that there's a lot of misogyny in that place. Okay? You don't have to be an insider to see it. It's actually on full display. In fact, here's a compilation of Eric Bolling just being sexist, which isn't going to actually prove anything, but it just shows you how the culture there is denigrating for women, and I think would open women up to being harassed. If they're treated like pieces of meat, well, on air, imagine what goes on off air. So let's take a look at this compilation and let it speak for itself.
Speaking of hot people, before we go, Sarah Palin.
The first female pilot piloting for the UAE. There she was, leading the strike.
Would that be considered boobs on the ground or no?
Oh, my. Wasn't that representative?
We take more risk. We take more chances. We probably die more often taking those risks and chances. But we're more successful. We're better traders.
Whoa.
We're better leaders.
What are you talking about?
And we're better athletes.
What do you mean?
And should young girls be allowed to play in all-male teams because of the potential of getting hurt? Eric, what do you think?
No. No, there's boys leagues and there's girls leagues. Should a 9-year-old boy want to play in the girls league and run through defenses? I mean, who's to say some of the boys don't want to tackle a girl? No, come on. Let the winners win, let the losers lose, let the boys be boys, let the girls be girls.
Sorry, when the girl's the best player.
Men take more risks. They take more risks in life, and therefore they die sooner, smoking, drinking, whatever. But they also take more risks in business.
Anything that a guy can do, I also say, woman can do better. Prove me wrong.
There's no laughing at anything a guy can do, a woman can do better.
Oh, can you think of something?
I won't even get myself in trouble for it.
All right. One more story here before we get the hell out of here for the day. All right. Now, recently, Kellyanne Conway brought back a old talking point to deflect criticism from Donald Trump's defense of his son, Donald Jr. So now, George Stephanopoulos had Kellyanne Conway on and basically pressed her on the fact that the White House keeps changing their story, keeps putting out conflicting statements about certain meetings the president's son had with certain people. Now, and of course, the president's role on defending him about those meetings. So let's take a look at Kellyanne's response to being pressed on this issue.
Two very different answers in the space of 2 weeks there, Kellyanne.
The most important thing that Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said there, which is completely true, is that there's no consequence to any of these meetings. The president weighed in as a father. He did not dictate the statement.
But first, the White House and the president's lawyers said he wasn't involved at all. They didn't tell the truth.
George, I know there's this whole thing about where everybody wants to take
about
this tack.
Telling the truth.
Let's talk about, let's talk about telling the truth. Let's talk about a president looking Americans in the eye who are still suffering 8 years later, who were lied to. If you like your plan, you can keep your plan. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Benghazi happened because of a video. Go tell the families of those 4 innocent Americans
you're simply
who were
changing the subject right here.
that lie mattered.
Hold on.
Oh my God, Benghazi. Really? You want to talk about Benghazi? You want to bring back Benghazi? Oh, here we go again. Look, there are 7 different investigations into Benghazi. Republicans investigated the fuck out of it because they knew that Hillary Clinton was going to run for president. Oh, look, where are the investigations now? Oh, seems like we're not having any Benghazi investigations. Oh, that's weird. Look, as far as the White House under President Obama, did they fuck up their talking points? Absolutely, they fucked up their talking points. If you want to bring that up and say, hey, man, they didn't have their intelligence and they went out and spoke out of their ass anyway, that's a fair criticism. I've made that criticism. But to bring up that, the president conspired to basically lie to the American people about Benghazi just for what? What gain is there? What protect the Muslims? We've been bombing Muslims. Under President Obama, we bombed the shit out of Muslims. Now it just so happens that we're bombing the shit out of Muslims even more under President Trump. Oh boy. I guess there's a bit of a change there. But look, we're talking about Benghazi, right? So, but she's using that to deflect from the fact that this administration has been lying their ass off about all the, like, I hate to say it, I'm going to trigger some people, the Russian stuff, the Russian investigation, okay? Look, the reason that matters, again, since they lied about it, is that this entire meeting is, yes, it's collusion, it's not illegal in this case, but it could have been in violation of campaign finance law if this Russian lawyer had actually given Donald Trump Jr. information that he used. Now, and I'm sure if she had that damaging information against Hillary Clinton, that he would have used it. And that would have been a violation of campaign finance law. So that would be a problem. Trump Jr. first lied about that, said the meeting was just nothing more than a meeting about adoption. Big lie. And they had all their surrogates out there saying essentially the same thing. And then it turns out, no, it wasn't. New York Times story ran it. And then Trump Jr. said, okay, I'm just going to release my emails, which showed what he was actually there for. And that was just to get dirt on Hillary Clinton. So there's your context there. Now, Kellyanne, she is not finished yet. Let's take a look.
George, the president has said the entire investigation is fabricated, that this is a conclusion in search of evidence. They've come up with nothing. We've been doing this for almost about a year now. And what is there to show for it? What has actually metastasized in a way that we can say, wow, there's a smoking gun? Silver bullet. I spent a lot of time with you during the campaign as a campaign manager on your 2 programs, and others did with ABC as well. What one thing did we ever say, do, or conspire that had anything to do with Russia? When I needed negative information about Hillary Clinton, I took a moment and I listened to Hillary Clinton. I mean, we went to Michigan,
Kellyanne,
not
but wait
Moscow.
a second. We know now what has come up in just the last few weeks is that Don Jr. responded to an email saying that he was going to get Russian government information on Hillary Clinton. That was not out during the campaign. That was revealed just in the last several weeks.
Right, but what came of that meeting? Nothing. Jared Kushner shared with the House and Senate committees and then with all of us in a public statement at the White House about 10 days ago, George, that he had texted an aide and said, please get me out of this meeting. It's a waste of time. If you're getting dirt on your political opponent, if you're getting the silver bullet and the secret sauce on how to win the election, you don't ask your aide to pull you out of the meeting. You say, please order lunch. Let's just stay a while. There's nothing. It was nonsense. It was a ridiculous meeting. It was nothing. People want to offer their services and have meetings all of the time. Believe me, I know you know this. But let's look at the consequence. No follow-up, no results.
So no follow-up, nothing that we were looking for. So we were open to colluding with the foreign government and getting foreign information, which would have been an illegal campaign contribution. But it didn't turn out. And we didn't get the secret sauce. We didn't get the silver bullet. So we were out of there. This is sort of like conspiring to rob a bank, getting there and finding out that the teller had actually, that they had emptied the vault and there was no money there. Well, you still kind of broke in and you still had the intention of robbing the bank, but just because you didn't do it doesn't mean that you didn't try to do something wrong. You can't receive opposition research from a foreign entity, any foreign government. And look, if you want to talk about Hillary Clinton with Ukraine or whatever like that, okay, hey, or whatever, Russia, that would be wrong too. But again, we're not talking about that. We're talking about this because Donald Trump happens to be the president and his campaign happens to have colluded with Russia. Okay. But now, did you notice that their entire argument went from we didn't collude to so what? It's not illegal. Okay, that's true. But your story continues to change. Why? Why does that story continue to change? Why lie about it? It seems rather weird. Well, maybe it's because Kellyanne Conway is a serial liar. She lies all day and all night, puts out bullshit, because that's exactly what Donald Trump and the administration have hired her to do. And guess what? She's doing that job rather faithfully. And this is just another example of that. Okay. Anyway, that's it. Before we go, I want to read a super chat from First Storm and the Last. Going back to the Eric Bolling story, he says, in all fairness, you could send a picture of his face, and it would still technically be a dick pic. That's a good one. I like that. That's good. If I had T-shirts, I'd give one. So, but I don't have merchandise, so unfortunately. But that was an excellent joke, nonetheless. So now, let me go through and let's see. Read some hashtag TYT Nation tweets from you guys if you've been sending them in. Again, thank you for Storm for the super chat message. Let me find this here. Let's see. Do you know Kyle's stance on minimum wage? Raven Dawnhead asks. If so, what's your thought? What, like, I would assume that Kyle is in favor of a $15 minimum wage, a living wage. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm in favor of that. I'm in favor of a living wage. So if that's a stance, absolutely. Tira Amalad, sorry about that name, says, thank you for addressing the jobs report. Well, you were welcome. Raven again asks, here's an interesting question. Bernie, Nina, or Tulsi? Do we have to choose? They're all really great candidates. They all have their strengths, and they all, of course, have their own unique weaknesses. But they would all, I think, make great, make a great presidential candidate. So look, man, even if you have like a personal favorite inside of a primary, I would have no problem voting for either of those three in a general election. Now, Fifi Ferengi tweets in, Trump just signed an executive order that would make it harder for all applications for every type of visa to be processed. Does that include H-1B and HB2 visas? Then, okay, well, that's interesting. We'll see where that comes, what comes from that. Let's see. Dr. Romance tweets in, replaying BioShock. Oh, that's a good game. And not active. YouTube Studio. You in the studio look great. Sorry. Your insight and integrity remain invaluable. Thank you. I appreciate that. So thank you guys for sending in those tweets. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate you guys watching at home. Thank you so much for supporting TYT Nation, supporting Around the Nation here, and watching the show. Make sure to like and share this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. And keep sending those tweets. Tomorrow we'll have a great show. I'm not sure when Ron's going to come back. Hopefully this week, but maybe not. That's all right. We'll get him as soon as we can. Get him back on the show, because I know he's definitely a fan favorite, and I really enjoy talking to him about these issues. But anyway, thank you so much. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation. We'll see you tomorrow.